Welcome back to my channel. It's your boy Adam Raw. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. So the last video pretty much was kind of like, I don't really expect too many viewers for that one because I know it was, it's kind of far-fetched, right? But this video might be a really good video for those of you who wasn't really feeling that last one, right? So essentially in this video, this is what we're going to correlate today. Today we are going to look into the correlation, well, I shouldn't say correlation, but the connection of magic in electronics and planetary applications. I'm not going to write that all the way out, right? So yeah, this is basically what we are going to look at today, right? Okay, so so what does that mean? Okay, so basically, whether we believe it or whether you want to believe it or not, there is spiritual influences that connect. Excuse me. There's a lot of spiritual connections, or I would say there's a lot of spiritual influences that can be drawn from electronics and the planets, planetary, right? So that's where, you have planetary magic and stuff like that. Oh, I'm sorry. Not just planetary, but also chemistry. There we go. That's what I'm missing there, chemistry. So we're going to look at the correlation between magic in electronics, chemistry, and the planets, right? So this video, I'm going to do my best to try to keep it short and sweet. Okay. So as you know, there are three aspects of the soul, right? There's three aspects of man, right? You got the higher self, right? Higher self. You got the self. And then in psychology, we have what the id or the ego, right? So it's like super ego, the ego, and super ego, the self, and like, no, id, ego, and super ego, basically. Id, ego, and super ego. So I'm just going to leave this as id, right? That's our primitive desires, right? This id is going to represent pretty much like our lower natures, our basic, you know what I'm saying, instincts, right? Our instincts. This right here has to do with our ego, which is a balance, what we call the in-between realms, right? Because it takes what we know with how things should be, and then we are to make a decision, right? This is where we make our decision, right? And then you have the higher self about basically how all things should be. So if we had to look at that mathematically, we will see it as what? A sine wave, like that, right? The highest part of this wave represents our higher self, the highest possibility, or the highest or the best possible outcome of things, right? And then right here, this will represent the id, which is the lowest we could go with, whatever decision. And then right here in the middle ground, everything in between is the self, because there's every decision that we make is on a gradient, okay? It's always on a gradient of between being our highest possible self and our lowest possible self, and we always make a decision based off of something in between, okay? This also applies to, let's say, the planets, right? Only the higher self will be the cosmos, right? The self would be the soul. And then you have the id, which I call the sub-soul, right? In the cosmos, we have what? Planets, right? Inside the soul, we have what? Chemistry. And then the id, which would be basically, I will have to say, yeah, let's go with electronics, right? Just for the sake of keeping everything simple. Electronics. Now, the reason why is because the planets, right? The planetary influences and stuff like that, we all know, if you're here, I'm not gonna, you know what, I don't want to generalize, okay, because I could have someone from different backgrounds and stuff like that, but essentially, ideally, this is how it goes. With the planets, we have come to an agreement that there are some people out here that believe that the planets influence the way that we behave. Okay, that'll be in another video. Okay, that'll be another video. It won't be this video, right? And then you have our chemistry, right? The chemistry aspect is more correlated to biology and anatomy, in which we have certain glands that secrete certain hormones and things of that nature. Those hormones are made of chemical compounds, right? Because we are organic beings, essentially, right? So there's a lot of chemistry involved. That's why I chose chemistry for the soul, even though the soul is something totally separate. But for the sake of this is, this is the best way to correlate everything and get everything to fall in line. And then you have the electronic aspect. The electronic aspect generally has to do with, or you know what, maybe, no, the electronic aspect of this has to do with using elements according to what they excel at. You see what I'm saying? And this right here, we have the biological aspect of the elements, in which there's a lot of interplay. There's liveliness. There's gradients. Okay. With electronics, generally, the elements are concrete, and they have this way of, they are by virtue. Each element has a virtue, and they accord by that virtue, right? So this is going to be the correlation or the connection between magic, and let's start with the planets, right? Hang on. I'm trying to do it, and I got these ashy hands, and I keep trying, man, I got lotion nearby, man, but I don't know, man. I gotta do something about these hands, man. So anyway, on a planetary level, basically, we are going to talk about how magic correlates with the cosmos, magic in the cosmos, and how it works, basically, right? So basically, you have the sun, right? Matter of fact, there's 8 in the cosmos. There are 8 forms of energy, right? You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, ideally, these are the 8 ways that energy is generated in the cosmos. First is the rotation of the Earth. How the Earth rotates generates energy. Okay, now, what does that mean? Basically, when the Earth is, right now we have a constant spin, right? And so as the Earth spins, you go from day to night, right? You have, everything is cut into hours. Every hour, if you are, magically inclined, you know that every hour has some sort of significance. Okay, so if the Earth is spinning really fast, it's going through basically its rotation, magically, you're going through the different thrones, because there's 24 thrones. You have 24 hours. Every hour, a different angel is in charge, or a different energy is in charge of a throne. Okay. Now, what does that look like, astrologically and all that other good stuff? As the Earth spins faster, it generates energy. The Earth's rotation generates energy based off of rotation. We see that in in science, right? Anything that is in rotation, the faster the rotation, the more energy it's gonna generate, essentially, right? So the rotation of the Earth generates energy. So that's one form of cosmic energy that can be generated. Next would be the revolution of the earth around the sun. Okay? So just as rotation creates energy, revolution also creates energy. So you got rotation, and so far you have revolution. Okay? And basically those are going to be the two, basically those are going, these two are generally the pretty much that's basically where all your energy is going to come from in the cosmos. Either something is going to rotate around something. I mean, it's rotation is going to generate energy, and what it's rotating around is going to create energy. Okay? So those two different things, rotation and revolution. Okay, we see that in kinetic energy all the time. So as we continue, and we just continue to just keep breaking it down, you got the revolution of the earth. I mean, rotation of the earth, the revolution of the earth around the sun. And then you have the rotation of the moon, right? And then you have the revolution of the moon, right? What's the difference? As the moon rotates, it creates tides on the earth. It creates tides on the earth where it pushes and pulls on the tides, right? So that's doing what? That's magnetic energy, but it's still generating energy, right? Now, as the moon revolves around the earth, that's also creating energy in which both energies are like, well, the sun, basically how the earth and the moon, how they rotate around each other, rotate with each other or whatever. They are keeping each other in place, essentially, is what I want to get at, right? And then you have the rotation, you have the rotation of the planets, right? And you also have the revolution of the planets. So essentially why this is important is because, let's say, okay, so basically, for those of you who are into like astrology and astronomy and things of that nature, you know that every planet has a strength or a force, a strength, right? And if you label them, which usually, in magic or whatever, just for the sake of this, it's going to be like about 7 of them, right? And we're going to rank them by the number 7. The energy that has the strongest pull or strongest influence is going to start off with Saturn, right? Saturn, we associate that with karma, right? Number 2, let's see, would be Jupiter, right? And then after that, we have Mars. And then after that, we have the sun. And then after that, we have, what is that? Is it Kokov? Or let's see, Kokov. I remember this one. This is Lavona. Noga. We have Noga, which is going to be Venus. And then we have Mercury. And then we have the moon. Okay. So, and true enough, we have other planets out there like Uranus and Neptune and all that good stuff, right? But at the end of the day, what's important is this. These energies, each one of these planets, they have a certain energy, okay? Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, all of these energies here, they usually well, we have this way of saying it has an influence on us, in our behavior and what's to come and things of that nature. We've seen that in divination for a long time, right? About how different planets affect us and stuff like that, and how how that goes pretty much, right? Now, how these planets are rotating matter, because let's say if Mercury is, let's say, I think that would be more of a revolution. The Mercury retrograde, like when the planets are retrograding, that definitely it will be the revolution of the planets and how it affect, right? Because that energy can come past and then it comes back. Now that rotation of the planets is it would be like the attribute of that planet. So let's say karma itself with Saturn, pretty much what you put out is what you're going to get back, right? Now, when it goes into the revolution of the planet matters, because if it's going forward, that means that, you're dealing with a lot of things that you've been trying to run away from, right? Or whatever you've been putting out is coming back. Now, if it's in retrograde, that affects the revolution. Now, if it's going retrograde, what happens is the things that you thought you were cleared of is coming back to retest you to make sure that you passed it before you move forward again. If that makes any sense, right? And then last but not least, there's this thing that I was looking at. It's the rotation of the sun itself. Because the sun is at the center of our universe, right? And as it rotates, it's like the vibe that I got from it, because I was looking for it, but I couldn't get all the information for this. But this is all intuitive here. But I calculate that as the sun rotates, that right there dictate how much light is actually being transmitted into our solar system, which is also keeping all the other planets and stuff, in gravitational, So I think that if the sun was to stop rotating, or if there was some kind of rotation that stopped with the sun, not only would it stop lighting, but I just got this vibe that if you slow its rotation in any way, shape, or form, it would cause either a magnetic or energetic release of energy that would throw the rest of the planets out of whack, is the vibe that I was getting. And then you also have the revolution of the sun. The sun revolves around the universe, okay? So as it rotates around what's at the center of the universe, that's an energy as well, right? So those are basically the 8 energies that I came up with. Excuse me. And there could be more, because our universe could be rotating and that could be revolving around something else. And then that could be rotating and revolving around something else. It's just a long list of rotation and revolutions here, right? Now, this is where I correlate it to electronics. Now, where do I want to start here? I think I'm going to start at the very beginning. Hang on just 1 second here. Okay. So let's start with Mercury, right? Mercury is known as a communication planet, right? Has to do with like communication, magic, and all that other good stuff, right? If we were to correlate this magic with, because we already did the cosmos, right? With electronics, right? Mercury will be equivalent to a transceiver, in which information is given and received, right? Essentially, that's what it would be. And in spirituality, we experience this as the law of mentalism. The law of mentalism. right? And I apologize if my handwriting isn't like the biggest, but man, when I was in school, I used to get killed on penmanship, and then I just finally took the time to try to work it out, man. So let's see here, and then you have let's do Saturn. Saturn would be like, well, of course, the law of karma, right? Law of karma. Because this karma has to do with whatever energy you put out is what you're getting back. Okay, we see that with diodes in electronics, right? This has to do with diodes, right? It sends energy out in one direction and receives it in another. So essentially what you send out is essentially what you're going to get back. Okay, for those of you who know about diodes and what diodes are, what they do, you should definitely check it out, because you have one-way diodes, and then you have a ceramic wait a minute, hold on, before I get that wrong. You know what? Not just diodes are like this, but is that right, diode? Because the diode, it pretty much keep the energy flowing in one direction, and then it eventually, once you get through the circuit, there's a chance that it could return and keeps it in one direction. You know what? I would say a ceramic capacitor. I think that would be the best. A ceramic capacitor, because what happens with a ceramic capacitor is that it'll send energy out to the circuit, and that same energy has to come back in return. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of like pulses. It sends the energy out, it goes through the entire circuit, and that same energy has to return back to it before it'll pulse again. Okay, so Saturn, it will definitely be more like, you know, like a diode kind of ceramic capacitor kind of thing, right? And that has to do with law of karma being a one-way street. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you send out, at some point you're going to receive it back. Okay, and then you have what is this? Jupiter is going to be more like a resistor, right? With this resistor, it is correlated to the law of rhythm. Okay, to the law of rhythm. So basically with this resistor, it keeps, basically, let's say if it limits it, I'll put it like this: it controls the flow of what comes in and out of your life, essentially, right? That's basically how Jupiter as a resistor is going to work, especially with the law of rhythm. With the law of rhythm, basically, when it comes to rhythm, the rhythm has a height and it has a depth, okay? And it has to flow within that height and depth. If it goes outside that height and depth, what happens is it breaks the system, okay? It breaks, essentially, if it's too high or if it's too low. Well, if it's too high, it definitely gonna break. You know what I'm saying? But if it's too low, being too low usually isn't a problem. You know what I'm saying? But essentially, the law of rhythm works with the law of karma, okay? Because the rhythm has to do with how often something is going to keep coming back and coming around, okay? And that's the same thing with the resistor. It's going to control the flow of the energy that's coming in. It controls the flow of the energy that comes in, okay? So if you try to call in something that you aren't prepared for, Jupiter's responsibility is to constrict and to keep that energy from coming in. But once you pass the lesson that Saturn brings in, it is permitted to open up and let that energy just kind of like flow, right? So next we have let me see what else we got here. Okay. So next we have, let's say, and I could go through all of these, but I'm not gonna go through all of them. But basically, I'm just gonna, let's say you got the sun, you got Mars, you got Venus, you got the moon, and of course you got like Pluto, Uranus, kind of thing, right? Pluto and Uranus are pretty much gonna flow like a they flow together with the law of polarity. Polarity. Sometimes I think faster than I could write, so it kind of like, you know what I'm saying? But basically, there, you know, there's a relationship there. You know, they have a relationship there where pretty much Pluto governs. Let's see, what was that? Uranus and Pluto. Okay, so Uranus and Pluto, and then you also have Earth and Neptune, which pretty much the law of polarity, essentially, right? You got light. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Pretty much, you know, it's pretty much their relationship, whatever. I had to go into detail on that later, you know, because I already, you know, wasted enough time. But either way, you have the sun, which is going to be like a generator, and that's going to be connected to the law of gender, right? Because you put out positive, you receive, you know, you put out the positive energy, and then it goes out into the unknown, the feminine energy, and it returns, right? So basically, it's kind of like how thought and action follow one another. When you take, you may have, you know what I'm saying? Like, you may have a thought about something, which would be the negative energy, right? That comes in. That's the thought. You put out the positive energy. The positive definitely goes first, right? But, you know, I mean, the positive energy definitely goes out, right? And then it goes out, it does all the what it needs to do, and by the time it receives back to you, you are receptive to what was put out, essentially. So basically, that would make the sun connected to the law of gender, which makes it like a battery, essentially. And then Venus would be like a transformer, in which the energy basically is amplified, essentially, just like with copper. Okay, and that has to do with the law of correspondence. Okay, then you have Mars. Mars will be like the wires in when it comes to electronics. It would be like the wire. It has to do with like the physical connections. You know what I'm saying? It's physically connection in the law of vibration. Electrons and the way that they work off of vibration. They vibrate themselves through the wires and all that good stuff, right? Okay, so long story short, we corresponded it with the cosmos and electronics. Now let's get to the good part and do chemistry, right? All right, so when it comes to chemistry, right, I'm just gonna pick one of the elements to do, and I'm gonna show you how I worked it out, right? So basically, when it comes to the universe, right, you know that we have planets, right? One, let's say, I'm just gonna put them all over the place, all right? No specific order, but you got 1, 2, 3, or whatever. This is the sun, right? And then you got, let's say, the first planet, which is Mercury. And then you got the second planet, which is gonna be like Venus, right? And then you just got all these orbitals, right? Each one has an orbital, essentially, right? So you have pretty much every planet pretty much has, you know, an orbital, right? Now, where do we see this? We see this in chemistry, right? We also see it in chemistry, right? So let's start with, let's say, sulfur, right? This is just the easiest example I could find, sulfur, right? So sulfur, you got your nucleus, right? And then you got your outer shell, your first shell, which has 2, right? And then from there, you got one that has 8, right? 1, 2, you got 3, 4, you got 5, 6, and then you got 7 and 8, right? That second shell, it's got 8 in it. And they're like all connected, right? And then from there, you got 6. 1, 2, well, I shouldn't have did it like that. I should have put it right here, here, and here. I'll just act like you don't see that, right? And then you got one down here, and you got one down here, and you have one up here, right? So you got 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're gonna connect it back right there, right? So essentially you have the nucleus, and then you have 2, 8, and 6. And what these represents are the electrons that are in the outer shell of the sulfur, right? The electrons in, is it electrons? Yeah, electrons, because right here in the center, that's all clustered together, would be like a bunch of neutrons and protons are going to be like in the center with this element. There's a lot of protons and neutrons that are clustered together here. But you have one shell on the outside that has neutrons. And, you know, this is the second shell, and then this is the third shell. You got 2, 8, and 6, right? So what does 2 represent in, you know, basically in spirituality? 2 is the dyad, which is also has to do with duality, masculine and feminine, right? Right? So we're gonna, you have masculine and feminine, right? And then you have 8. What does 8 represent? 8 in spirituality has to do with the 2 hands of God. Four for the left, for the left-handed path, and 4 for the right-handed path. 4 left, 4 right. When you combine them together, you get the 8-pointed star. That 8-pointed star, one name Yod He Vav He, and the other Adonai. One is the left-hand path, one is the right-hand path. One creates and the other destroys, essentially. One receives, one transmits. Okay? Masculine and feminine energies, essentially, right? Masculine and feminine energy. One is masculine, one is feminine, right? And then you have 6, right? What does that 6 represent? Usually we get the Star of David, right? So essentially this right here has to go, let's see here. Okay. So essentially with this right here, when you apply it to math, you know, magic, essentially, right? You got the dyad, which is going to be feminine, one masculine, and one feminine, right? When you do masculine, you got one that is going to be Ra, and then you got one that is, wait a minute, hold on. Okay. So you got so you got one that represents Ra and one that represents Isis, essentially, right? The reason why Ra and Isis is because Ra is supposed to represent the divine masculine. Okay? That's perfect man, essentially, right? And you have Isis, which represents the divine feminine, right? Perfect female. Now, the reason why you have 5 to represent each is because, remember I told you about the left and the right hand? You're going to take 4 of those points. You got 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. That's what, 8, right? And also you have the dyad. the dyad, one for masculine and one for feminine. So it makes 5, 10 total, which means that 2 and the 8 together is what? 10, right? What's left? You got 6 points. So when Ra and Isis come together, they create a balanced child, which we call El. And essentially, for those of you who don't know, when you combine Isis, Ra, and El together, you get the name Israel. Right? So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And this child that's created here out of this energy represents, what is that? The child that's represented in this energy is pretty much like, you know, El, the inner God, the God energy. Not capital G God, but you know, it's like that that sun energy. Well, actually, in this circumstance, it would be the Shekinah. If I was to do, let's say, phosphorus, if I was to break down phosphorus, it would be L. I would create L, because after you do well, long story short, phosphorus is like 553. Okay, 3 represents the masculine energy. 556 represents Shekinah. Okay, this is a female or goddess energy or whatever. But essentially, you see where I'm going with all of this or whatever, right? How it all interconnected and how it all pretty much locks together. Every element has, you know, a set like that, or it's set up in that manner in some way, shape, or form. You see what I'm saying? Like with carbon, you know, of course you got your center, but you know, you got your 2 in the outer shell, right? And then you have the 4 on the outside of that. What does this create? You got 6 points. So that's shield. You see what I'm saying? That this right here is supposed to represent the masculine energy, and then this right here is supposed to represent the feminine energy, and you know, pretty much overlap on what we're creating, whatever. But yeah. Matter of fact, there's other I would say exceptions to this, like with carbon. Me personally, I would use the 7-point, the heptagram, because when you have a 3-4 heptagram, what happens is with these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever heptagram. Yeah, when you do like the heptagram, there's a way, if you organize it right, you end up with 4. You get 3 squares, which means that you got 3 squares like this, right? You end up with 4 triangles that rotate around each other. You see what I'm saying? And all of that is incorporated in a 7-point star. But yeah, that's just like long story short. But anyway, this is my way of correlating all of that together. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know, man. This is just kind of stuff that I just kind of found myself into. You know, you can agree or you can disagree. That is completely on you. But this is me showing my work. And what's that? 39 minutes. Okay, yeah. But yeah, and the reason why I correlated that way is because once you see the connection in one thing, you start applying it to the connection in all things, all across the board. At least that's how true spiritualists do. You know what I'm saying? There's a correlation between everything. Like once you align yourself with the wisdom, you begin to see that wisdom in all things, right? And basically with the planets, we saw how basically energy, right? And how energy works. You got either the energy is gonna revolve around something, or it's going to rotate. You got rotation and revolution, essentially. But nothing is at rest. With chemistry, if you know, I'll do that video too. With chemistry, there's oscillation. So with the planets, it'd be rotation and revolution. With chemistry, it will be oscillation, because the energy jumps up and out of shells and stuff like that, and it bounces around and stuff like that. So there's definitely oscillation there. And then with the electronic aspect, it has to do with direction of flow, you know, the natural virtue of things, where by nature, if we were to compare it to, let's say, matter of fact, I have that too, where it's connected to what, the 12 laws of nature, was it? Let me see here. I got a lot of stuff in there. Yeah, it's like the law of inertia, right? Well, all things wants to move in a continuous motion. You know, especially if it was a frictionless environment, everything wants to move in one way, one direction, essentially. That would definitely be electronics, where all things want to move in one single direction. That's what, you know, the inertia. You know what I'm saying? And you know, oh man, okay, so let me see here. Yeah. But yeah, I guess if you're interested in, you know, correlations and stuff like that, more videos about correlation, just let me know. Because this basically is kind of like something that I fell into. So, all right. Love y'all all. Y'all take it easy, and peace.